has the New Zealand Rugby Foundation developed over the years from its inception?
When it was started in '85, it was about rugby in need. So it'd be something as simple as scrum machines at clubs, or help them supply showers in their change rooms, that sort of thing. And then as it evolved and rugby went professional, we, as an organisation, decided to focus on seriously injured players, historically and current, and offering them support and partnership for the rest of their lives. And more recently, we've started putting a lot more resource into research and injury prevention, moving ourselves to the metaphorical ambulance at the top of the cliff. And that's been a bit of a step change for us. It took a bit of a realisation that we were wearing ourselves out and our donors out by constantly saying, there's been another serious injury, can we have your help? It's a lot better message to say, with your help, we've stopped the injury happening. So it's been a big mind shift, a big messaging shift, and it's been very well received by our supporters.
Yeah. And was it always the intention, like was that always the plan for the foundation to develop in that way, or has it sort of evolved over time?
I don't think it was planned per se to develop like that. We've always wanted to do more and have a bigger impact, but just through the busyness of being a very small management team and looking after quite a large cohort of injured players and every player that plays the game as well, you sort of get too busy being busy to realise how big and more impactful you can be. So to take a couple of days in 2018 with the board and management team together to really spitball some ideas and reinvigorate ourselves and our passion and all that was hugely beneficial.
Yeah.
And then obviously trying to roll that out post 2018 with COVID and that put a bit of a speed bump in the way, but gave us perhaps more hunger and more enthusiasm to rip into it when we came out of lockdowns and to present day.
So what were some of the initiatives that came out of that meeting in 2018, was it?
Yeah, 2018. It was to make sure that what we would do, and we've always, the CEO, Lisa, drives quite a strong mantra in the office that we always front page ourselves. So anything we're about to do, how does that look to those that are most important to us? And that's equally the injured players, the reputation of our board members, the donors' reputation, how they see us using their generosity. So we what am I trying to say here? We came out of the meeting making sure that what we were going to do is has maximum impact to the existing injured player cohort, but also how could we get our messages of safe play and prevention and research alongside New Zealand Rugby, Rugby Smart, ACC, and offer them support. And there's many ways we can do it. It's as simple as, at some levels, of us providing the safety messages to clubs, because it sounds a lot more soft, a lot more certain and authoritative when it comes from an organisation that looks after injured players, as opposed from perhaps a directive from above from New Zealand Rugby into the provinces, into the clubs. So it's just everyone knowing their role, everyone knowing that the collaboration is very important, but who's going to best serve that purpose? Yeah,
and as much as you would have been talking about, say, the next 5 or 10 years with the foundation, like, do you guys how far do you actually look ahead?
Well, we've got our vision now is 0 serious injuries in rugby. Alongside that, it's also that any player that is injured, we support for life. So there is a catch-22 there, I suppose. We see us being around as long as rugby's around, and we see our role evolving and becoming more important. We are really excited about the research we're doing around concussion, and that's a conversation that has to happen or the game's going to die. And we're really proud to be associated with it, and the people doing the research and the organisations. This is peer-reviewable, publishable, proper research. This isn't just some whimsical fly-by-night stuff. Injury prevention, we continue to work hard. We've done some in the past. We were heavily involved with the changing of the scrum engagement technique in the mid-80s that was seeing a lot of spinal injuries, and the result of that was extremely clear when those injuries just stopped happening. So.
That sort of leads into the next question around, I guess, what's the one of a term, the what happens to the player, like as soon as that injury happens on the field, and then how does that journey sort of, I guess, begin for them from that very moment and onwards with the foundation?
There's probably 4 stages to it: immediate, short, medium, and long term. Now, the immediate one is you don't know the severity of the injury in most situations when it happens. So we have to treat it in the worst case scenario. And that'll be Saturday afternoon. Lisa will get the phone call, and her immediate actions are get the family around the injured player in whatever hospital they're in or spinal unit they're in. Taupo South goes to Burwood Spinal Unit in Christchurch. Taupo North goes to Auckland and Otara. And it's about getting that initial family there for when the player wakes up. Reassuring the family that here we are, we do everything, but without overpopulating them with information because they're in a state of trauma and shock and that anyway. So that's the immediate impact, is trying to reduce the impact of that trauma. Then the short term is this person A going to get up and walk out of here, or are they going to be a VIP, a very injured player, and be with us for life? And then it's sort of how does the next 6 to 8 weeks in hospital look, in the spinal unit look? What's their likelihood of leaving the spinal unit? What's that time frame look like? Because it's going to be different for each case, obviously. What are their occupational options? What's their home situation they need help with? How can we help them with ACC to work closer together to make sure they're getting the level of support they're entitled to? How's the all-player insurance policy going to roll out? It has to be very, very clinically led. It's something we stand by. Clinically led in that first instance, because everything has to be done medically correct and through process. As they move from sort of short term to medium term, it's what's the rehabilitation program like? How quickly is this person going to start helping themselves, if you will, through its rehab, and how can we assist with that? Is their house ready for them to move back into? Are they a late teen, 20-year-old that still lives at home? Do they need an outhouse to build independence rather than still live under mum and dad's apron strings? And then from there it goes on literally for life. We've had people in chairs for well in excess of 40 years, and we support them until the day they pass.
So the relationship with the foundation is a lifetime one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got numerous cases of people we know that have been injured as teenagers that have since gone on to get married, helped them into their first home. Maybe they've got kids now. They might have changed careers 2 or 3 times. And we're there for every step of that journey, and to help in any way we can. It's about enabling life's opportunities. Yeah. And if they need a hand with anything, we'll help them. I mean, we've helped guys with business mentoring advice, put them in touch with the right people to do their own startups, and that's just such a great feeling to see that independence. Others of them have other needs, perhaps they want to get into arts or sports or become Paralympians or farming. We've got guys in wheelchairs that run dairy farms. It's pretty amazing what these guys do. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't know where to start on a dairy farm, but
and that's with 2 legs.
Yeah.
Let alone, I can't imagine being on a.
You should see some of the equipment these guys get. These chairs are like mini tanks. They've got these huge wheels, and they get out and they do it, and they control herds and run their staff and all that jazz. It's awesome.
Yeah, just goes to show you can do anything with a bit of technology and a bit of willpower to do things.
A lot of willpower, man. The inspiration and mental fortitude of these guys is incredible.
Are there any couple of cases in particular that stand out for you, that you think, man, that's what they've done with their life is bloody amazing and blows your mind?
Yeah, there are 100, 102 VIPs at the moment, and that number obviously goes up and down, but it's pretty static around 100. To signal 1 or 2 out, I can, and I don't mean to do this to be, these aren't my favourites or anything, they're just the ones we're most familiar with because we've used them as part of fundraising appeals lately. Cody Everson, for example, he was injured in June 2011, so he's been just over 11 years in a chair now. This was fascinating. It was in Christchurch, 2 minutes from Christchurch Hospital, Shirley Boys versus Christchurch Boys in the first 15 game, but it was after the earthquakes. So despite the hospital being over the backfield, it took them 25 minutes to go around all the roads because everything was shut and all that jazz, which was just crazy. Wow. And Code's gone on to, co-captain the Wheel Blacks at the recent Paralympics. Him and Jess have just got married, moved into their second house, and just had a beautiful baby. And so we've been part of his journey the whole time I've been with the foundation. So you get to know these guys, they're your family, and it is just an absolutely remarkable story. Similarly, Robbie Hewitt, who was injured in 2009 by memory, he down at Wairau. He went on to work as community rugby manager for Waikato Rugby for 10 years or something like that after that. So to see these guys that are fallen from rugby but still be so passionate about it and want to be part of it and continue their sporting pursuits, it's just massively inspiring.
Yeah.
I mean, at the other end of the spectrum, you've got guys that were injured before I was born.
Wow.
So these guys have been in wheelchairs longer than I've been breathing, which blows me away.
Yeah.
And the wisdom and sage advice and life hacks they can provide to the younger guys coming through about the longevity of life and how to make the most of it is absolutely outstanding.
Do you actually have events like that where the VIPs can get together and network, or do you have anything planned in that space?
Yeah, we do. It used to be based around the Wellington Sevens because it was easy, it was central, and it's an ideal stadium to have a lot of people together. That sort of came to an end because it was too hard to host in Hamilton. So we're looking at ways that at the moment actually to next year roll out a program where we bring a collection of these guys together plus their carers, and let the guys talk to each other, hang out, learn business skills, get a motivational speaker, get a former footy player to speak as well, so it's fun, but also to give the partners a chance to connect and talk and tell their stories and bounce ideas off each other, because
they're living it too, right?
Oh, they're living it, man. And you've seen it at some of our fundraising events. You get an injured player up on stage to tell their story. Everyone's buying into it and listening to it. You get the wife telling her story, and there's not a dry eye in the house.
Oh, no.
I mean, they're the ones doing it real tough, man.
Yep, totally.
And it's... I don't know how they do it. I don't know what I'd be like, or if I was the injured player to start with, how I'd go on and get on with life, let alone how I'd be if I was the partner. It's just... I know you got to put your mind in some pretty dark places, I think. In my opinion, to them it's their reality. So you just get on and get it done. It blows me away.
Have there been any VIPs that are women?
None yet, touch wood.
Wow.
There will be.
Yeah.
Last year we had, this year we've had 13 near misses, so there's significant enough injuries to be taken to hospital. 13 female ones. We've had more male ones as well. We had 65 near misses last year. I think we've had 54 to date this year.
Is that across men and women?
That's men and women.
Yep.
There's no discrimination against gender or race when it comes to rugby injuries because they're such freak occurrences.
Yeah.
But each of these injuries takes up our time. We've got to treat each one of these near misses, we call them, as if it's going to be a forever injury in the first instance, because we don't know. They don't know.
Yeah.
We certainly don't want to neglect them just because, you're just another near miss. I mean, you get up and you walk away and you may have a couple of fused vertebrae or something like that, but there's still huge mental impacts. There's still internal impacts in some cases. So it's not a you're a near miss, we're never going to speak to you again. You stay on our database and we keep in touch.
Yeah, exactly.
Because what could be the re-trigger of that initial injury?
Do you think with more like women's rugby is going all professional?
Yep.
Do you think you will see a female VIP?
I think just by the sheer numbers,
more games, right?
Participation at amateur level you're going to. You don't see these injuries at professional level because they're so well trained, they're so well conditioned that they and there's so few professional games compared to amateur games that just by scalability we're going to get them in the amateur game, and that's the big threat. It's going to be a different kettle of fish dealing with them, but as an organisation we're very aware of that. We're not waiting for it because it sounds like we want it to happen, but we're prepared for it, and we've got slightly different systems in place to make sure different emotional and mental levels of support are there. There's differences you can't deny. So.
Yep. I want to talk about the two aspects of how you guys raise funds for the foundation.
Yep.
One of them is events, so we'll talk about that first. But the next one is about the about the donors, right? So you've got a strong donor program that's continually developing and things. So if we can talk about those two things, fundraising, events, and donors.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my my favourite side of the business.
Yeah.
It's the part that that I largely lead is bringing the money in. Traditionally, our model, we get a $400,000 a year grant from New Zealand Rugby, so that sits there. So put us on a sort of $1 million turnover organisation. So that's about 40% of it. We get a little bit of support from gaming trusts and that, pokey money, class 4 stuff, but not a lot because we've got quite a healthy balance sheet and our need isn't urgent and our impact isn't community felt, and that's what they have to give their money to. Fundraising events is something I'm pretty proud of, actually. We've worked really hard in the last sort of 6-7 years to make our annual luncheon head and shoulders above any rugby club luncheon, and I can unashamedly say it is. I mean, we had one in July, we raised $215,000 one afternoon, and it's incredible. You know, we don't try and squeeze 700 people into the room. We don't say here's a sausage roll entree and a bloody buffet dinner. You know, it's quality food. It's salmon entrees. It's chef prepared mains. It's hand delivered to your table. It's green bottled beverage. It's nice wines. It's fitting for what we're asking. We're asking a lot from our donors at these luncheons. A, we're asking them to come and support it at $250 a head. B, we're asking them to dig deep and pledge just to basically make a donation. C, we're asking them to participate in an auction. D, we're asking them to bring friends along and let us talk to their friends about this message that can be somewhat confronting on first acknowledgement of it or first receipt of it. And then we're trying to say we're going to give you an entertaining afternoon at the same time. And now that's a tricky balance to do over a 3.5-4 hour period. Yeah, so we looked at our fundraising event, our main annual luncheon, and whatever fell into the trap, probably around the Lions tour in 2017, of going, this is easy. There's this big noise around test matches. Let's get a selector and a non-playing reserve on stage and market that, and people will go, ooh, we're talking to these All Blacks, let's come along. It took a year or two to realise that we then had people in the room that thought it was part of the test match experience. Right. They were buying a ticket to listen to, say, Foxy talk about selections or Jerome talk about being injured and not being able to play that weekend. That's not us. So why would those people come on under that umbrella and then listen to anything we have to say about fundraising? It wasn't working. I mean, we had, in the Lions' first test, we had 987 people, I think it was, in the big marquee on number 2 ground, and raised just shy of $100,000. We were stoked. Yeah. As I say, 5 years later, we had 457 people on the July 1st and raised over 215. So I'm really proud of how the team, the board, whatever, got together and said, let's not be ashamed of what we do here. Let's not be ashamed of our messaging. Let's tell people before they come that we're going to be in your face to get money. And we're going to be in your guest's face and be ready for it. And we were, and they responded amazingly well.
Oh man, that was it was the best one, I think. That was
pretty heavy though, eh?
It was heavy, but it's a heavy cause, at times. And I mean, we're not trying to make light of it at all. We're trying to raise awareness for it because these people are going through a hell of a hard time. And we've been going to these for 10 years now, and I felt that the one that just happened in July was it was the best. It had the best messaging, the best speakers. Great that it raised the most money, and it needed to off the back of COVID. You guys went through a bit of a lean patch there, so it was about saying to everyone, look, hand on heart, we are going to be pushing for funds, and because you had to, and I think the next one coming up in September. Is going to be more of like the old style one, but that's fine as well. It's a pre-Bledisloe one from memory. Yeah,
it is. It's pre-Bledisloe, and it is going to be a step softer in our calls messaging. There'll still be plenty of ways to give. Don't worry, we're not letting you off that easy. But it's not going to be as aggressive as that. And the reason for that is, you've been coming for 10 years, for example. You don't bring the same people every 10 years, so you may have 5 or 6 people at your table. This will only be their second one in 12 weeks. To get that emotional messaging pushed into your face 12 weeks apart is pushing it a bit. It risks message fatigue, it risks donor fatigue, and once people feel that fatigue, they tend to step away, and we don't want that. So this is going to be a lot softer. But what July also proved to us is, and this is only my opinion, I stand to be proven wrong, I think 215 to 240k is probably saturation point for fundraising at a luncheon. So what we're going to look at for next year is take the fundraising part and move that into a dinner. So make that a Thursday night dinner, not a Friday night, because no one wants to ruin their weekends on a Friday night. Thursday night dinner, it's black tie, it's dress up, it's husband and wife and friends. It's not a boys' day out sort of thing, which a few tables still are. And the ticket prices will be slightly higher, but the auction prices will be slightly better as well. And it's going to be a class event. It's going to take us into that dinner space, which will still allow us to do the luncheon, as we are in this one coming up, a lot more relaxed. There won't be a fundraising pressure on it. We can maintain the same entry price. We can keep it chilled and relaxed. And you know, we did one in 2020 between lockdowns where we suddenly had I think it was 9th of October that lockdown finished, and the following Friday we had a luncheon at Eden Park where we had 500 people, and it was, you remember, it was JK, it was Iceman, it was AJ Wetton, it was John Hart, sitting back talking about the 87 World Cup when life was easy and rugby was fun after the hell of lockdown we'd been through. So that tied in quite well. So we want to try and recreate that vibe around the September one. I mean, we're going to have Laura McGoldrick emceeing it, so she'll bring her little energy to it, and she's cool. Laura's so cool. We're going to have Michelle Hooper, the head of the Women's World Cup, talking about the upcoming Women's World Cup. I was just chatting with Tim Southey today to try and get a couple of black caps to talk about them winning the World Test Championship last year and just coming back from the West Indies, because why not celebrate other sports? You know?
Yeah, true.
If we're not, yes, we are the Rugby Foundation, but we're a bunch of good Kiwi people and supporters that like celebrating our successes. So we'll bring them into the room, and then we'll have a couple of Aussies and Kiwi, well, Aussies and All Blacks. Talking about their Bledisloe memories. Just waiting to confirm who that is. Is it Conrad Mertz, Matt Dunning? I see Peter Fitzsimons in town. He's a bit of a dag.
He's a character there.
Yeah, so and it's gonna be fun and casual, and a bit later in the year, so the weather will be nicer, and we'll
looking forward to it.
Probably head up for a beer afterwards.
Oh, it's awesome to hear that there's like all these different ways that you guys are trying to add value to these events, and you know, and keep them fresh. Essentially, that's what you know. I imagine that's one of the aims, is to try and keep them fresh, keep people coming back, keep them excited about supporting the cause. We can just go back to the other side of it, which is the donors, and obviously you've got the giving circle there, and a couple of other aspects around donations.
Yeah, that's been another realisation of that 2018 strat meeting I was talking about, is we needed to refocus our attention off events which were about 28% of our income, and just so risk exposed, and COVID highlighted that unbelievably. So we started rolling out the giving circle, where we've identified people that have been coming to our luncheons for a number of years that are constantly helping and asking us how they can help, what more can they do. And we want to treasure these people, because I mean, they're our future gold. So we set up the Giving Circle, which is asking people for a 3-year commitment of X amount of dollars. That enables us to have immediate income now. It also enables us to plan out for the next 3 years with no risk, because they've committed to it. And we've restricted it to only 50 people. It's not a grab a form online, sign up and you remember. You get invited. And we make sure we talk to these people. We make sure that they are massively passionate about what we do. What aspect of our work are they passionate about? Do they have the right attitude? Are they prepared to mention it to a mate? Are they prepared to wear a tie pin at an event? Are they, they're going to put the logo on their letterhead, sort of thing? It's got to be people with pooled resources, but also pooled intent to make immediate impacts and also allow future planning. And it's gone quite well. We're at 10 members now, which doesn't sound like many, but I don't intend on doing 50 this year either, because we don't want people coming at the bottom level. We want them coming at the mid to high, but that's guaranteed us $200,000 income, which means when we look at that project for injured players and their caregivers next year, we don't have to worry about, let's price it out and see if we can get the money. It goes, there's money there from these people that care that will totally get why we're doing this project. So it's just, let's roll it out and do it and show these guys. I mean, maybe we invite some of the giving circle people to that weekend. Maybe they have a business contact that may help in that context. And many of them have come and offered more than money. They want to do more. How can we help? Some of them even suggested some names. Have gone, here's a couple of guys, this is what they do, have a think about how they might fit in. And there's been instances where we've had to say, just not quite the right fit. Maybe a bit, their business is quite not aligning with what we want to do. It's got to be a special group of people, and we look after them. We've got some cool things planned for those giving circle people. Because
I guess there is there a certain type of individual, or say someone likely going to be a business owner, right? Potentially, are there certain types of industries that you'd like to get on board as opposed to some others? I mean, we're not trying to, obviously discourage anyone, but is there certain businesses that would have more of a that would be more beneficial to the Rugby Foundation?
Yes and no. There's those that we know, and they're the people we've targeted to start with once we have the existing relationship with, obviously. They're largely in construction and property and civil sort of stuff. Once we've built that foundation, once they start bringing their friends, they'll naturally be within similar industries or affiliated industries. Then the last stage that we've got to do, and that's probably sort of the last 10 people we put into the Giving Circle, an organisation that can directly benefit us operationally. Like what do we do? What do we need that can make VIPs' lives better, for example? One of the projects we rolled out 5 or 6 years ago was called Heat Pumps in Homes that we did with Panasonic. Because when you end up in a wheelchair, one of the first things you lose is your natural temperature control in your body. So if we were to roll out a project similar to that, who can supply it? Let's get them on board in the Giving Circle for 3 years. It's not a lifetime thing. It's done in 3-year lots. After 3 years, people can go, not interested in the second term, or we can go, we really need you to step up higher or move on. So it is a dynamic group. But that's up to us to identify what the bigger need's going to be. I mean, we know we spend a lot of money on house modifications for injured players. Can we get carters on board, or places, or a construction group housing company or something like that? So we're excited by it. We're in no rush to fill the 50, because the first thing we have to do is get some bucks back in the tin after COVID left us about 760 shy of where we should be.
Oh wow, that's a big ground to make up, eh?
Yeah, I mean that includes the capital fund hit as well, which is bouncing back slightly now. But once we can get that balance sheet back to where it was pre-COVID, plus with that reassured income into the future, that's when we're really going to see the big impacts. Yeah,
nice.
And it's going to be so cool to be able to report back to the likes of you guys and other Giving Circle members, so you can actually feel how good it feels to know you've made such an immediate impact and difference.
Well, yeah, the one example that springs to mind, and was pretty recent, was around that the defibrillator.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's a real good one. Did you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, it's probably the most recent project that we're really proud of at the foundation. We tried to do it pre-COVID, sort of had the idea floating around, but obviously got stalled rolling it out. But at the start of this year, we embarked on getting defibs into every rugby club in New Zealand, and they have to be installed externally, so they're accessible to everyone in the community in the event of a cardiac incident. And so we put one in Coastal Club, Bodie's club down in Taranaki, that happened to be Graham Murray's club, who sits on our board. Put one in there in March, I believe it was, and then on the 5th of May, after a training run, one of their guys had a cardiac arrest, 34-year-old guy with a young family. So his mate started to give him CPR, while others went and got the defib. He was dead for 12 minutes.
Hell.
And with the use of CPR and the defib machine, they managed to bring this guy back for life. So when you get that phone call, it's a good time to start reaching for the tissues, because
for sure, man.
You can't measure the impact of that, and you can't plan for that. But I mean, if it's happened once and we've only rolled out 26 machines so far, who knows how many other times these things are going to be used? And it doesn't always have to be rugby. I mean, you go to a smaller town, that might be the grassy field where they play touch, where they play football, where they do equestrian. I don't know, whatever it is. It might just be a bunch of mates having a game of touch on a Sunday afternoon when they're there. If there's a cardiac incident there and there's a defib there, use it.
Yeah, we've got more and more of them in our buildings. As people become more aware of that sort of thing. It's a couple of grand.
Are they customer driven, or is that something you guys are actively doing?
A bit of both. Yeah, I guess we sort of got the idea off a person who said we need a defibrillator in the building. So we're like, yeah, let's run with it. Try and promote it out to all of our buildings. Some people have reservations about spending $3,000 on something that's going to save your life, and that's kind of disappointing to me. And I don't quite get it. But there's a company there that's come into the market that are actually selling like single-use defibrillators, so they're a lot more affordable. It's literally a device that I think it's like, say, $300 rather than $3,000. You can use it once and then it's done. So I think that's probably a way to get more and more people into it and just kind of break the ice potentially. But you kind of think, come on, $3,000 versus a life potentially.
Yeah, well, yeah. The ironic thing about that is I'll spend 20 on a car that's likely to kill them. So where's your priorities there?
Exactly. Exactly.
Obviously, in any job you get, in any life, you get to meet a whole lot of cool people, and they have varying impacts on you in varying ways. And I think in this job, I've been particularly fortunate to meet some bloody inspirational people, and by that I'd say that'd be our injured players. And seeing what they go through. I mean, we've got one guy. He communicates via an iBoard, so it's a plastic board with letters on it, and he looks at a letter and spells out words to his wife. Oh, wow. He's that level. It's called locked-in syndrome.
So he can't talk, but he has to look. He types with his eyes.
He
essentially
gets fed through a tube. He communicates with his eyes. Wow. He's got a wife who he met online, and she was in the UK, and she'd come over and they've got married. And they've now got triplets.
Holy hell.
So he's pretty cool. He's pretty inspirational. He's orange mohawk, does bodybuilding. So goes to this gym where they enable the muscle movements by assisting him, and he's just chiseled and awesome. So the injured guys have been amazing. The other side of it is, of course, you get to meet all the rugby folk, because we are the Rugby Foundation, and that started really early for me. My first year here in 2009, I was sent up to Red Beach in Whangaparoa to get a guy to sign a couple of jerseys. And 2 hours later, I left Sir Fred Allen's house after being shown through his man cave, going, "Oh my God, that's Fred the Needle." That was a hell of a surprise. I didn't really get told who it was just someone was going to sign some jerseys. So I think he's
still got the best winning percentage of any All Black coach.
Yeah, man, and a hell of a guy. He was old but sharp.
Hence the needle.
There you go. The following year, I had the privilege of interviewing Sir Wilson Winneray about the 56 Springbok tour, because we had a match ball that we were going to auction off, and talking with someone like Wilson, who's the only ever foreign captain to be carried off Cardiff Arms Park on shoulders with the whole crowd saying that he's a jolly good fellow. Wow. That's sort of the mark he had in rugby.
But in the business world too, right?
Oh, in the business world, went all the way to the top at Carter's and all that, Carter Holt. A guy that we got to know really well, who's now passed on, Sir John Graham. I'd probably rate him as one of the most influential New Zealanders of all time, what he did for the schooling system as well as being an All Black. He was also the manager of the Black Caps after they went through all that trouble with smoking weed in Africa. He was the guy that came in as the manager and said, "These are the new standards and this is what it's going to be." And if you look back historically at their record on and off the field since then, it went north. It's like he just gets stuff done.
It's like getting told off by your dad.
Absolutely, and it was like that in board meetings too. Like you'd be presenting these things, these are these great results, and trying to explain to him Facebook algorithms and likes and hits and all that jazz. And you'd casually lean your elbow on the table, and he'd just look at you as like, "Shit, elbow off the table." he just had that glare and that stare. God, we missed DJ. So I think that was the 4th of August 2017 he passed away, and then 2 weeks later on the 19th Pine Tree passed away, which was a big day for the foundation, and a very sad one. He was immense. People often talk about, they still talk about the time they met Pine Tree and how he gave them so much of his time just to chat with them and all that, and they'd see him a few years later at an event and pester him about, does he remember when, and he'd remember each occasion as well. He was just incredible. And then since Pine Tree, he was our patron when he passed away. Since then, Ted's been the patron, and he's been as available as Pine Tree, and just such a good bastard. And there's a whole lot of other good bastards as well. Andy Leslie's one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet. BG's still involved. All these rugby people giving back, just giving their time and their advice and their availability. And it's simple things like, if I'm talking to a potential donor and they join the giving circle, for them to get a phone call from BG later that night and saying, "Hey, thanks a lot for getting involved," that means the world to that person.
I think it's a pretty cool.
It's happy to do it. It's pretty cool for them.
I totally concur about all those names there, and having met a couple of them over the years through the foundation ourselves. But I always remember seeing Pine Tree at these at the lunches and stuff, and I was always just blown away at how small he could make a stubby of beer look in his gigantic hands. He could carry the entire rugby ball and make it look like it was a children's ball. But man, he just had the biggest mitts you've ever seen, and it looked like a toy bottle, and he'd just be chugging away on his beer and that. But absolute legend of the game, right, and of the foundation.
Yeah, absolute legend. But I mean, the other group that I've been lucky enough to meet are the likes of yourselves, and not only those in the giving circle, but I've been doing this for 13 years now, and there's our Big Eden Park luncheon, but there's also half a dozen throughout the year that I have to go to, that I get the honour and privilege of going to. The coaches, the managers, the supporters, the sponsors, the administrators, those that drop the kids off and pick them up, that bloody fill the sidelines and the bars and the clubs and cut strapping tape and cut oranges and encourage their tamariki and mokapuna to play the game and try and get those values into these kids that we had pre-technology, of mateship, of camaraderie, of goal setting, team building, working together, walking down the street after school, chucking a ball to your mate across the road rather than having your face buried in a phone. We've got to bloody well preserve those values, man, because they are so quintessentially part of being a Kiwi and sticking together and all that jazz. And I think one of the issues you may be seeing with the current crop of players, this is the first generation that's come through with the face down attitude, rather than the eyes up. And I'm not saying that's any plight on them as individuals or as a team, but that's got to be a shift in consideration for new coaches and how you develop that sort of team ethos. So it's
engagement and attention spans essentially.
But I mean, I can go now to any rugby club and tell our story about the foundation and what we do and what we're trying to achieve in that. And everyone in that room loves rugby and is eyes up, wanting to listen and wanting to help. It's so rewarding.
Yeah, mate. Don't we know it? The guest speakers at the last one were outstanding. When you got people like Valerie Adams up there giving Paddy Gower a hard time, and then you got like Richie McCaw and those guys, and it's like you can't help but listen. They're some of the best New Zealanders that have ever graced the sporting field and just been good human beings. But to have them there. I don't think I saw anyone buried in their phone when those guys were on stage.
Yeah, well, I think if you're turning down a night, you're doing all right.
Yeah, true. Not much to go from there. Interesting to see how long he'll keep turning it down for, but I think everyone's expecting him to say yes at some point. The other aspect about what you do is the advocacy side. So do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting body of work. It's not as often seen, but it's as impactful. Recently, for example, I'm not going to go into too much details about it. There's been a lot of work done about making sure there's pay parity amongst caregivers, whether ACC contracted or private. And so that's something we're really proud of. We're also very proud of the work we do. I'll give you some examples. I mean, there's gardens and decks at Burwood and Otara Spinal Unit that we help fund. That's just so that anyone in the spinal unit has got the chance to go out and get some fresh air and enjoy the sunlight in what's a pretty miserable time of your life. Oh yeah. A few years ago we did a collab with the Middlemore Foundation about getting this thing called the O-arm, which is a big circular ring that any orthopaedic injury can go into, and it gives you a full 360 around it in real time, and it allows you to operate microscopically. So it's all on screen. I can then put my little needles in, see them on the screen, and do the operation to fuse bones together and all that jazz. And there's only one of them in the country, sort of thing. Wow. So to fund that wasn't directly for us is really good. Prince Harry came out here in 2015. I stand to be corrected. No, I think it's 2015. And we were one of the nominated charities that he was going to spend half a day with. So rather than bring him in-house and sit there and talk about footy, we took him to the spinal unit. So you could see every patient in there that went there for various reasons. We didn't have a rugby person in there at the time. So we took a couple of our injured players, a couple of All Blacks along, made a big song and dance. And as a result of that, because the spinal unit heard they were going to have all this media here and royalty, suddenly there was a paint job at the spinal unit, which hadn't happened for years. So being able to assist, influence, lobby, drive in those sort of areas is really good and takes up a lot of time. And it's something we do not for recognition and not because it's visually out-facing to our donors or to the public, but because it makes you a bloody good person. So it's sort of our way of donating, as your way is giving us money, our way is helping here as well. So it sort of completes the circle.
I quite like those unintended consequences. Like Prince Harry's going there to visit, and they think, ooh, someone else thought, gee, we better get this place looking sharp, and if he hadn't gone there for a visit arranged by you guys, then that paint job wouldn't have happened.
Could well
It's
something
like
else that it was.
Yeah, that's cool.